Support the Amigos podcast and keep the Amiga goodness flowing for just $1 a month. Visit our page at patreon.com/AmigosPodcast.
Amiga, the first personal computer that gives you a creative edge.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Amigos. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today we're going to talk about Stunt Car Racer.
Oh yeah.
But before we do, we've got some feedback. So do you remember our hardware section last week?
On the Amiga 3000. Yes, I do.
That's right. We had a listener write in to the blog that we talked about how rare and obscure the 3000 UX
the
must
Unix
be.
version,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Well, it turns out he has a 3000 UX.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this is Guru Anthony.
All right. He must be a guru if he's got one of those.
Yeah, and he said that he got it just to get a 3000. I guess that was the one that was available to him, and he really bought it because it has that scan doubler, so you can hook up a VGA monitor to it.
Oh yeah, I don't blame him on that.
But he wrote a very long and informative post about the 3000. And it's really good. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but check out the blog. Look at the comments from our last episode to find out all about the 3000. He basically just said, though, that the 3000 didn't sell very well because everybody still really wanted the 2000 because I guess it was cheaper and it really was the same sort of deal.
Yeah, yeah, it was a lot cheaper too.
So thank you, Guru Anthony. He's from the Guru Meditation. I think that's the name of his site.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I've heard. Yeah,
and so we thank him for writing in. The next news is a little bit of Amiga Documentary news. Aaron, you want to take this one?
sure. I was nosing around this week, and sure enough, I came across this a documentary called Viva Amiga: The Story of a Beautiful Machine, which the name itself is great.
Yeah.
A gentleman named Zach Weddington has finished this Amiga documentary. He's been working on it for the last 4 years, and apparently it was financed with crowdfunding at a Kickstarter. The film's 100% complete, and the distribution plan is solid and all set up, according to Mr. Weddington. The film will be officially introduced at the South by Southwest Film Festival, very prestigious, in mid-March of this year. And all the supporters of the Kickstarter project will get their copy of the film before it debuts, which is good for them. I had a chance to watch the trailer or the glossy tidbits that they put out, and it was it was great. I really enjoyed it. Now, I'm a sucker for this was just cheerleading, effectively. It was like the Amiga was great. It was ahead of everyone else. It wasn't a clone. It predated Windows. It was, and that's the stuff I love. And it makes me want to jump in a time machine with a steel chair in my hands, beam into an old Commodore executive board meeting, and just start waffling people with that sucker. Because every time I see stuff like this, it makes me happy, then it makes me sad, then it makes me angry. Because they had the goose that laid the golden egg, and they cooked the goose, unfortunately. But the documentary looks very interesting. It has sort of a modern / 80s feel to it. It's hard to explain the graphics and stuff. The way they did it looks good. So that'll be something to look forward to. I don't know when that'll get released to the general public.
Yeah,
aside from the Kickstarters.
I know that some of the backers were irate. I know it's hard to believe that Kickstarter backers might be irate about something.
What was the problem this time?
But they were mad that the film was going to be screened at South by Southwest before it was shown to them.
Oh, I see. Well, I can understand that. That much said, and I don't know how well this goes on other countries, but South by Southwest is a pretty big deal in terms of like independent documentary film festivals, among other things. So, I mean, it's not like they're playing this down at the Y. I mean, that's a pretty prestigious thing. Plus, when you're working on getting distribution and whatnot, that plays very well when you screen your film
If
there.
you're trying to get the widest audience possible, then there's a lot of connected people down at South by Southwest.
Yeah, and having seen the clip that they released, I mean, it looks good, don't get me wrong, but it's not the kind of film that I would normally think you would see at South by South. So, hey, kudos to them, and hopefully the supporters, since they're getting their film before it's shown, will be happy and content, and will just enjoy the film and judge it based on the merits of whether it was any good or not.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing it, though. I really am.
There is a new podcast in town. There is it's called New Retro Podcast. So it's right to the point.
Wacky.
This is they are a podcast about retro gaming from a European perspective. It's two British guys.
Mm-hmm.
I listened to their first episode. I liked it a lot. They put a big link to our podcast on their sidebar, so we appreciate that. Thank you very much.
What do they do over there?
They talk a little bit about everything, but they did have a pretty big segment in their podcast on Amiga.
Beautiful.
And so they talked about WHD load being free and stuff like that.
Which we can't stress enough how awesome that is. Thank you over there.
Yeah, and so I just wanted to give a shout out and a good luck to the New Retro Podcast guys. Maybe one day we'll be able to do they'll be able to come over and guest host on ours, or we can come over and guest host on yours and, talk Amiga.
Or we could just have them over here, lure them down in the basement and beat them down.
Yeah.
Take over their podcast. No, I'm just kidding.
So there's also a new Amiga game blog. Aaron, why don't you talk about that?
Well, the game blog is where I got my news. We'll link it up. It's not really new. It's new to me. But I looked it over, and something that came to my mind. I guess I'm dense or too old school. People, guess what? They're still making Amiga games, and they're porting stuff to the Amiga. And there's a blog, a gentleman's blog. We'll put a link in the show notes, and he's got some good information on stuff that has been done recently. And one of the things I saw on there that's being released commercially is a game. I think it's Polish. I think it's Polish people that are putting it out. It's called Tanks Furry. I thought it was Tanks Fury, but no, it's Tanks Furry. I can't explain that.
Is that with two R's?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. It's a new product of an outfit called Project R 3D. Again, this is all new to me. Maybe you guys are in the loop. I've never heard of these guys. The game was awarded second place at the Retro Comp 2015 game competition, which I'm going to look into that as well because I'm not familiar with that. Maybe German. It's Retro Comp with a K. So
yeah,
maybe you know. The features of this Tanks Furry, handmade old school pixel graphics, dedicated chiptune soundtrack and special effects, 40 missions to play alone or cooperative. Hey, cooperative is always good. There are multiple themes: desert, wood, and jungle, and city. That's the way they've got it written,
Mm-hmm.
wood. So I'm guessing that's
it's definitely European.
yeah. Well, this is translated
From
heavily. There are 5 different enemy tanks, multiplayer with up to 4 people.
Wow.
Be interested to see how they pull
Very
that off. Now, I like this line. Works on any Amiga as long as you've got an 020 and a meg of chip RAM, and also it helps if you've got half a meg of fast RAM. So it works on any Amiga, sorta. Now, I read some postings from the guys working on this, and apparently it may work on a lower end Amiga. They didn't test it on it at that time anyway, so your mileage may vary. There's a boxed edition with a CD in it, shipping in February. Now here's the why, and then apparently they're gonna have a digital distribution as well for people that want to play this on their compact flash or hard drives or whatever. The price of this thing was $33 and $21 shipping, a total of $54 PLN, which I think is that the Polish currency?
That's got to be the Polish currency.
I did it. I converted it to US dollars. $13.50.
Wow.
Ship. Now again, please, for the love of all that is holy, don't take me and my word on this. It's just wacky translation from a wacky site. We think we know where it's from. We think we know the currency. PLN, but I think it's Polish.
Yeah.
But hey, man, if you can get this for $14-15, buy the crap out of it. I'd buy it right away. It looks good. I saw a video of it. It looks good. It looks pretty interesting. Haven't played it, but maybe now that we know that this stuff's out there, we'll start reviewing some of this stuff. And it'll be kind of a new reviews instead of just old reviews. We'll do some of the new stuff. But this is a commercial. This is a commercial thing, sort of like the re-release of some of the Cinemaware stuff that we were talking about a few months ago. And hey, support this stuff. It's great to see it's still out there. And if they put out a good product, throw them a few bucks.
Right. The last thing on my list is every week I look at our analytics. I look at where people are listening to us from, and most of the time it's a pretty good balance between the United States, the UK. Poland is a huge, we've got a pretty huge listener base in Poland. But for whatever reason, last week we had just the Ukraine. It blew up. There was one day where literally half of our traffic came from the Ukraine. So to all those Ukraine people out there listening, Ukrainians, thank you. We appreciate your you getting hooked on us.
We love the Ukrainians, the Poles, the people over in the UK, our friends in Norway, Australia, Germany. It's neat to I've said this before, but it's ludicrous, in fact, to think that people in all these countries are listening to two West Virginia boys in a dude's basement record this show, talking about a computer that's 30-some years old. But here we are. It's working.
Yeah. So I just wanted to bring that up just because I thought it was really cool.
That's great. I wish I could say thank you in Russian or
any other language other than English.
I got nothing.
So that is, I guess that ends our kind of pre-show show.
Is that what that was?
Yeah.
It's a pre-show show?
So I'm not really sure where that puts it. Before the pre-show?
I was going to say.
But now it's time to start talking about this week's game. Stunt Car Racer.
Yes.
Okay. Now, Stunt Car Racer. This game was also released under the title Stunt Track Racer.
Which I never saw it or heard that name until I read that.
Me neither. It is, of course, a racing video game. And it was developed by Jeff Crammond, as we would say in the United States, Geoff, because nobody spells it that way here.
That's an awesome. Now, do you know where Jeff is? Is he out of the UK?
He's British.
Yeah. Is that a common spelling of Jeff?
It is. It is. Short for Jeffrey,
which
they also spell that way. We most commonly know the spelling of Jeffrey that way because that is the way that the Toys R Us
the giraffe. And it's only. Oh, that's so sad.
And it was published by MicroStyle in 1989. In the United States, here it was published by Microplay. Now, Aaron, you've got some info on MicroStyle, don't you?
Yeah, I'd never heard of these guys, and it turns out that they were set up Microprose in the late '80s. Picked up a bunch of UK properties and companies, and apparently they decided they were going to make up a publisher over there to cater to an adult crowd. I don't mean XXX adult. I mean adult games that were action based, because they thought their label was more of a strategy label. Microprose, which is known for more of strategy stuff or simulators, and so they wanted something that would cater to more of an action crowd. They didn't publish a ton of stuff over there. They did International Soccer Challenge. The game, I've got to play this, Oriental Games.
Oh, we need that.
Everything about that sounds wrong. A game I've heard of but never played, Rick Dangerous 2 and Rick Dangerous 2.5. They did both those. And they did Simulacra, and they also did Xenophobe, which is, of course, we know that one.
Yeah.
So they didn't do a ton, but that you could see where they were at. They were doing those action-y sort of games, and this game absolutely falls into that realm. It's definitely not a simulator,
right,
by any degree.
So Jeff Crammond, we're going to talk more about him later on, but you may know him from Sentinel, from many racing games. He's been involved with a lot of games.
What's the big one he's known for? It was like the
Formula One Grand Prix.
Right. Have you played that one before?
No. I don't know if it's because I'm American and Formula One isn't that big over here. But I never really played any of the classic racing titles. Until we started doing this podcast, and we did Lotus. Stuff like that.
Right. I had a cup of coffee with Formula One back in the day. I mean, just try it. I'm not a car guy. Like this is a kind of car game, or Outrun, stuff like that, arcadey, racer type stuff. But it comes to like simulations of an actual race, I stink. I should never be behind the wheel of a Formula One car. I can tell you that right now. But I mean, this is a much ballyhooed title, and probably his biggest title, with Stunt Car Racer in the mix. Amongst it, the two big ones.
Yeah. The graphics were by John Cumming. He was behind also the graphics of Ivan Iron Man Stewart's Super Off Road,
which that's a really good Amiga title, and
it's a great port,
and it's a great game. I have a friend here locally that actually owns the arcade machine, and boy, that's you get your 3 wheels up there and everybody plays at once, and it's a lot of fun. So that's a great one to port. But like I said, it's as simple as that game is. It's the perfect example of how simplicity can sometimes be fun. Just to get a bunch of people on a track. It's very similar to the old Atari racing games where you'd have 4 wheels and just roll around in black and white.
Super Sprint and all that stuff. Yeah.
Exactly.
And then he also did the graphics for Rainbow Islands, which I'm sure we're going to review.
Rainbow Islands, another arcade classic. I'm not very good at, but yeah, that's a great one. I've not played the Amiga port of that.
Yeah, so we'll definitely check that out. And this game, as far as what it is, this is the ultimate example of a title that exemplifies what goes on in the game. You've got a circuit. You've got at the beginning of the game, you're greeted with this table, and you've got 4 divisions, and each division has 3 drivers in it, and you're there in the lower right-hand corner. I think you got a helmet on. You look
looking less goofy than the rest of the racers.
Right, exactly. And there's 2 tracks in each division. And basically what you do is you race your way through each table or each division. And so until finally you complete all the tracks.
In like round robin fashion, basically. You'll race every character on every track in every division.
Right. And you get a certain number of points. I think you get 1 point for each lap you win, 2 points for each race you win.
Right.
And that's the game. I mean, if you want to talk about it from the bird's eye view, that's all that goes on in this.
Yeah. Now, of course, if the game were just a simple race around a track, it wouldn't be. We wouldn't be talking about it today probably because there's a million of those. But what made this one stand apart is the fact that this was a raised track. The first thing that strikes you when you start is, as the track loads, you are presented with a 3-dimensional overview of the track. It's a raised track, and you can actually. One thing I like is you can spin that overview around,
right.
which is. It's awesome,
yeah,
and helpful because you really need to see every aspect of this track before you get on it. And then once you get on the track, you're literally your car is lowered onto the track by an unseen crane with these chains that are hooked to the track.
I always pictured it being a helicopter lowered beyond.
It could be. Helicopter is much sexier than a crane. And then you've got one opponent on the track, like I said, like Boat mentioned, the guy you're racing, and his car is rendered simply in. Squares and circles. It's as basic a 3D.
It's a 3-dimensional model of a car. It's very plain.
Right.
But everything about this game is very plain. But the reason why they did that is to give you a pretty good frame rate, and to be able to show you, the layout of the track in a 3-dimensional space, which at the time was very hard to do and took a lot of processing power to do.
Yeah, and if you consider that, when this game came out. This sort of graphic presentation really wasn't around much. Really, the only thing you could compare it to is maybe Hard Driving, that was out around the same time. And, it came out in 89. And if you consider that this thing it was only 2 discs and ran on the original chipset, I mean, this thing's as plain Jane as it's going to get. There's no math coprocessor at work. There's no 3D rendering via a third-party. There's none of that crap. It's straight up coming right out of your Amiga, pumped out. And it runs well. Is it the speediest thing? It's not super fast. It's not super smooth, but it's pretty darn good. Mm-hmm. And it gives you a good illusion of speed. The best thing about it is when you think stunt car racing, all right, what do you think? Big bank turns, jumps, crazy missing parts of the track that you leap over. This has all those plus crap you never thought of. The tracks range from like in the early tracks, you are simply presented with maybe a large humpback or a small jump, and then as you progress through the game, Actually, it steps up pretty quickly when you get to the second division. There's a track called Stepping Stones, which is brutal. I had a heck of a time getting past it. And then there's a bigger ramp, but you can see the progression. So, and then the third set of tracks, you've got much larger jumps. You've got much more humped tracks, And by the end of it, you're presented with something they call the ski jump, which is literally you just jump like off a chasm, And then you've also got a thing called the drawbridge, which is exactly what it sounds. It's an animated piece of track that goes up and down like a drawbridge, and if you hit it while it's up, you'll be blasted to the moon, effectively. The difficulties. This game can be mastered, not by me, but it can be mastered if you sit down and precisely plan speeds when you hit certain ramps. I mean, you really have to know, okay, can I hit this ramp at 150 miles an hour? Should I use my boost, which you have a limited amount of boost you can use to make your car go faster? You have to, in a weird way, there's a lot of strategy involved. And if you throw in an opponent who gets in your way, the one thing about the computer car is it's pretty solid. Mm-hmm. It goes around the track. And it
doesn't make a lot of mistakes.
It doesn't. And now you could screw with him too, but he's not going to screw up. And in this game, if you screw up, it could be a quick night, because once you drive off the track, the screen is presented with a crossbar at the top, like a roll bar, like a dune buggy would have. And every time you make a mistake or hit a ramp too hard or land too hard, a little crack will start making its way from left to right across the screen. That's okay. You only have 3 laps. You can usually get by with that crack before it goes all the way across. Once it goes all the way across, you're wrecked. What really hoses you is when you run that car off that racetrack.
Yep.
Then you got problems. A big hole will appear on the right-hand side of that roll cage, and every time you fall off the track, another hole appears. And those stay with you through your entire run up until the last division. I think they clear off on that last set. These things are the more of these you can get to a certain point where you're screwed. And many a times I've even had to the point where my car was so damaged that when the crane lifted me back up on the track and sat me down, it was too much for me. I would be destroyed. So simple concepts, though. Again, there's not a lot of gauges and stuff to watch. You just got the speedometer and you've got your boost, and that's, which is great. That's what I like about it. It's not something you're going to have to be a car guy to play.
Mm-hmm. You don't have to worry about making scheduled pit stops. You don't have to worry about any more gauges other than the ones you just mentioned. Now, I never saw, of course, the big thing that people remember about this game is when you hit the boost, flames come out
of your engine.
Yeah, of your engine. But I didn't know, is there a gauge on screen for your boost level?
Yeah, I think there is. It's funny because the boost is a limited thing, but I never got to any point in the game where I ran out.
Yeah, I never got it to run out.
Because I was too scared to crank it up.
Well, I would crank it up, and of course I would just die immediately. But I never saw that, so maybe when we do the stream we'll look again. But when you do wreck, or at the end of the race, you're greeted with these really nice drawings of your mangled vehicle. I never won a race, but I assume that you have the winner circle.
You never won a race?
No, I never
not
won
one
a
single race.
Not one single race.
Well, we know who's going to win this week's challenge, don't we, folks?
I did win. I guess we'll just skip right to it. I won 1 lap, and I played this game a pretty good amount. I only won 1 lap.
To be fair, I've played this game for a long time. Now, it's been a while since I played it, but this, I don't know. Part of it could be what you're using.
I'm using the 360 stick.
I've got the Witco, and man, for this game, it's a must. For me, I can't play with anything else. But I can get all the way through the first circuit, pretty much undefeated.
Wow.
Not the first circuit, the first division.
Right, I know what you mean.
The 4th division. Then when you move to the 3rd division, I do okay, but I've never gotten out of the division, unfortunately. But thank God you can play practice runs on the other tracks. So you can at least get to play them. The one that gets me is that, man, those stepping stones are tough to get past. I've played all. In fact, for me, that's the hardest track in the game. I think the other ones, a lot of it's just timing. And when I was really into the game back in the day, I could remember how fast I could go. Right. I can't remember that now. It's been so long, but I'm sure I could get back into it. But the good thing about this game is if you don't want to play through the circuit, you just sit down, play any track you want. and it works. And
Still
it works
have a
out
good
well.
time.
Yeah. The one of the things I always wondered was, like we mentioned earlier, if Jeff was inspired by Atari's hard driving or stunt driving, one of those games when he put this out. And lo and behold, I was fishing around the net, and some guys had a link to an article that was in I think it was Retro Gamer, is that
Retro
the
Gamer,
British
right.
magazine? Yeah. And it was an interview with Jeff, and he actually, I'm going to just read a little excerpt here from it. He said a lot of people thought he got the idea after seeing hard driving in the arcades. The truth is that I can honestly say that hard driving had absolutely zero influence on Stunt Car Racer, which had taken me 3 years to create. So if you think right there, he started in '86, right? I only became aware of hard driving a few months before the release of Stunt Car Racer. The game started out as a land-roving vehicle sim. That's what really got me. Driving around on a randomly undulating landscape. Early in development, I put in physics for the suspension and was driving it around when I noticed that I had the most fun when I encountered a bit of ramp in the landscape and took off and landed. That started me thinking, so I flattened the landscape apart from an up ramp and down ramp in the middle of the big field. I immediately got a great sensation when I jumped the ramp, so I added a few more. The next thing I realized that it was too difficult to find the ramps in a big field. So long story short, he took this from a Land Rover simulation and put that track together, and there you go. He also worked on the C64 version, which is actually pretty darn good if you've ever played it. So I thought that was neat. So in actuality, according to him, predates predates the release of hard driving, that's like I said, it's hard driving and stunt driving. Pretty much the only game in town that did it like
that
this.
Polygonal racing simulation. From my perspective as a younger person, the first encounter I had with games like this, Stun Runner. You have that sort of thing. And then also on the Super Nintendo, I don't know if you ever played Stunt Race FX.
Yes, I've seen it. I've probably played it. I don't remember.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
But this is 5 or 6, 7 years later. That this was
something else that I had heard about, and I'd always wondered. A sequel to Stunt Car Racer was announced in 2003. It was called Stunt Car Racer Pro. Same fellow worked on it, and it never came out. Same article, Retro Game Magazine. They asked what had happened to Stunt Car Racer Pro, and this is straight from the man himself. Stunt Car Racer Pro was designed fundamentally as a multiplayer game, and of course, we wouldn't have any restrictions with online play like we did with the F1 license in the Grand Prix series. It's a real shame it never happened. It was a self-financed project that simply hit a patch where the publishers just weren't signing on the dotted line. We got it to a working demo stage, so that means there's a demo somewhere of this. But as it was self-financed, we had a limited timeline before it became impractical to continue with the team. He says his business manager calls it the best game he never sold. So that's brutal.
Yeah.
When I read that, I was gutted because this game could easily be updated and with the same play structure and would be ready to go. I mean, it never gets old. Like I said, I've played it for years, and it was one of my go-to games on the Amiga. There's a Windows version, I guess, that was ported straight over to which I've never tried because I've got the Amiga.
Mm-hmm. In these days, most racing games incorporate some aspects of Stunt Car Racer with ramps. I mean, think about San Francisco Rush, games like that. Even the Burnout series. Especially Burnout Paradise, you're going on, you're jumping off ramps and stuff like that. But there really has never been a game that, the conceit of the game is that you are a stunt car racer.
Yeah. And one thing about, my brother's a big fan of the Rush series, and so am I. And I've actually got a couple of the Rush titles for the N64 that I picked up, and they're fun. It's sort of the same thing, but this is the one thing about Stunt Car Racer. It's just beautiful, distilled perfection. Mm-hmm. There's no crap. There's no weird loading stuff. You just get right in it and go. Then you don't have to worry about anything else. That's what makes it fun. Now, one thing we haven't mentioned is Stunt Car Racer had like hot seat league play. You could play, I think it was like 7 or 8 people. But it also had null modem support for 2 players with 2 different computers. Now, one thing I thought was interesting about this is, again, from the man himself, I read that, and I didn't know this, the Atari ST version of this and the Amiga version could hook up. You could hook your computers together.
Really?
So a beautiful, harmonious...
That is the first... I wonder how many examples of cross-platform play that there were. I mean, I can't think of any. I didn't even know that such a thing ever existed.
Yeah. From the little research I did, he had experience with networking one of his previous games, and it came in handy. He said it was the easy as pie. You set up one person as the master and the other as a slave, effectively. And the master will go through and pick the menus, and once you're in, you're in. Now, I recall my brother and I playing 2 players. I've played someone simultaneous 2 players before, and the problem with it is, like, if you stink and they're good, they're gone. just occasionally see them fly by, but still, it's neat. And if you had 2 really good players, I bet that'd be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
One last thing that I've got, there were a couple, I'm making air quotes here, enhanced versions of Stunt Car Racer released for the Amiga. They're made by hackers. Have you heard about these?
No.
I actually have both of these, and I've never tried them because I didn't know what they were, and still haven't tried them. So after we do this, I'll have to give it a shot. One is called Stunt Car Racer TNT.
Oh, never mind. I have seen that.
You have seen it?
Yeah. I have not played it, but I did see it.
Yeah, it's called TNT stands for the New Tracks.
Okay.
It was made by someone called Amiga, apparently Amiger, where new tracks were able to be played, and then
Maybe that's Amiga. Like,
Yeah.
I'm an Amiga.
Well, he's got it spelled capital AMI, capital GER.
Amiga.
Oh my gosh!
You like that?
Did you hit your foot with a hammer, Bo? Good lord. So this was supposed to be something decent, something halfway decent. New tracks, always good. Another game was called Stunt Car Racer Turbo. And this is from a fellow called Galahad of Fairlight, which Fairlight, if you were in the scene back in the day, was in fact, I guess, I don't know if they're still around, but they were around for a long time. There was a hacker group. And what this did was it significantly speeded up the frame rate on AGA Amigas, which I don't have. I haven't tried this. I don't think I've got a copy, but I'm going to go look for it. And it's also got built-in PAL and NTSC screen switcher mode that'll smooth out the frame rate, which wouldn't mind having that either.
Yeah, that would be well.
And these were released. I'm talking I think the second one was released in the 2000s.
Oh wow!
This is, and when I say released, you get what I mean.
Yeah,
it wasn't
yeah.
released. So this game's still getting love after all these years. What did you think of this game?
Except for the fact that I was terrible at it, you really got a sense of speed. And I know I said that about Lotus, but it's a different sense of speed in this game. Because it's a 3D game and you see, the scenery coming up to you in first-person mode. And this is one of the few games where it really makes sense. A lot of games that really kind of operate at a higher frame rate that are really pushing a lot of pixels, they give you a smaller viewing window to compensate for that. But in this game, because it's framed by your car's dashboard or
Cunningly.
whatever, you don't notice it.
You really don't. You're right.
And so I enjoyed playing it. I wish that there was a split screen, mode that we could go head to head on, but
we may have to hook up a couple Amigas when we have our big gathering at some point.
Yeah.
And throw down on this. Did you happen to look at any of the reviews on this?
Actually, I forgot to do that this week.
I had a quick glance. This game was pretty well received back in the day. Looking over a multitude of reviews, the couple that strike me, Amiga Computing gave this 100%.
Ooh,
a lofty score. The one for Amiga Games, I think these are both British mags, gave it a 5 out of 5. Amiga Power gave it 88%, but overall was pretty well received. I had a look on eBay to see what they were going for. It's funny, I never bothered to look at any of this stuff on eBay, so it's neat to kind of look it up now just to see if it's available. It sort of is, much like a lot of the stuff we've got. If you're in America, you're probably boned, frankly. I saw one recently that sold out of Canada and one that sold out of America a few months back, but that's it. If you're in the UK or in Europe, you get a better chance. I saw these going for around $25 US. I saw lots in the UK that were going for between $14 to $50 US. So they're out there to be had, And hey, this wouldn't be the worst thing to add to your collection.
Cool. Well, we already talked about the scores.
You lose.
But yeah, I lost.
Let's reiterate it. Boat is no good.
And so I guess that's really all that we've got on Stunt Car Racer.
Great game. Great. I loved it. I was so happy to come back to it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it too. Before we go, I want to thank our sponsors, Brent Dowdy, O'Brien's Retro and Vintage, and Chad Halstead. Thank you for supporting the Amigos podcast.
Thanks, guys.
If you'd like to sponsor the Amigos podcast, just check out our page over at patreon.com/Amigos podcast. Aaron, I've already got a game for next week.
All right, good, because I got nothing. What do you got?
We are going to play that classic strategy / platformer / head-to-head masterpiece, North and South.
Is that based on the Civil War?
You've never played North and South before?
I mean, I think I've heard of it.
Yeah, North and South is based on the Civil War.
Okay.
And it is a part strategy game, part platforming game, part a mini game collection. It's rather like Cinemaware in some respects.
Okay. Okay, sure.
And so
I have to say I've not played that, so this will be new ground for me.
I'm looking forward to it.
You just want to kick my butt at something, don't you? I knew there was. I knew it. I knew it.
So look forward to that next week. Until then, we'll see you then. Adios.